The Victory Garden was never mostly about patriotism. It was a deliberate nationwide strategy to delete civilian demand, stabilize prices, and free up precious shipping and processing capacity for the war effort. Welcome back. I'm the Archive. I've been reading the Homefront bulletins for decades. The problem was straightforward and brutal. Total war turns every ton of steel, every gallon of fuel, and every ship into a military decision. Food that moved through a long commercial chain, picked, processed, canned, packed in steel, loaded onto trains and ships, consumed materials and transport capacity that the military couldn't spare. Worse, rationing plus wartime pay meant civilians were sitting on cash and coupons, but couldn't spend them on scarce goods. That mismatch pushed inflationary pressure onto the remaining commercial supply. In short, the government faced two simultaneous threats: a logistics bottleneck that could starve troops and civilians if shipping failed, and an inflationary spiral that could wreck the home front economy. The Victory Garden campaign was designed to attack both problems at once. Historical solution. The official solution was to turn backyards and vacant lots into decentralized production nodes, millions of them. The Department of Agriculture and the Office of Civilian Defense didn't just suggest planting, they engineered a public program. They published standardized plot plans, tested high-yield varieties, taught succession planting, and promoted preservation via canning and drying. The Garden campaign reframed civilians as a distributed agricultural reserve. Grow what you can at home, preserve it, and keep it out of the formal market. That lowered civilian demand for shipped vegetables and reduced pressure on canning factories, rail cars, and Liberty ships. The aim was economic stabilization through local production, a tactical, no-nonsense intervention that freed resources for the actual fighting. What? Household gardens produced millions of tons of vegetables that otherwise would have traveled through strained commercial and military logistics. Why? By removing that consumer demand from the formal market, prices stabilized, shipping capacity was freed for military use, and the nation avoided the destabilizing effects of an overheated wartime economy. That's the whole point in one line. Pattern break. An odd, attention-grabbing fact. Here's the kicker most folks don't expect. By 1943, nearly 20 million Victory Gardens were producing roughly 40% of the nation's fresh vegetables. That's not a feel-good footnote. It's a real, measurable reconfiguration of supply that changed economic outcomes. Your backyard zucchini literally helped keep a troopship loaded with tanks moving overseas. How it works? The big reveal: decentralized buffer stock and deleted demand. The core economic mechanism is what economists call a buffer stock, except this one was living and distributed. A classic buffer stock stabilizes price by temporarily absorbing or releasing supply. A centralized buyer buys when supply is high and sells when supply is low. Victory Gardens created a different kind of buffer. Millions of small producers who simply opted out of the market. That's deleted demand. If you grow and can your tomatoes, you don't go buy a can at the store. Multiply that by millions of households, and the aggregate effect is huge. Two effects followed. First, the demand-side pressure on commercial vegetables fell, which reduced the upward pressure on prices and the risk of hyperinflation in that sector. Second, the government and industry could redirect shipping, labor, and steel towards strategic priorities, moving foodstuffs that couldn't be produced at home, grains, fats, processed rations, and crucially, moving men and material overseas. Put simply, the garden reduced a civilian draw on a logistics system already running at redline. Practical application: how they actually engineered the backyard war effort. This wasn't guesswork. The government produced detailed, regimented guidance. Ideal plot size, about 25-6 x 32s. Crop schedules, spacing and canning instructions. Extension agents and 4-H clubs taught families how to rotate crops, use succession planting and preserve harvests. They emphasized high return, high storage crops, tomatoes for canning, beans for drying, potatoes for calories, and cabbage for sauerkraut, vitamin C in winter. The idea was to maximize calories and shelf life per square foot. Community canneries and cooperative packing lines multiplied effectiveness. Shared facilities overcame household limits on kettles, fuel, and manpower. Tactical design details: what a weaponized garden looked like. The recommended garden was not pretty. It was tactical. Rows were dense and sequenced for continual harvest. Early radishes gave way to bush beans. Quick lettuce went between slower maturing cabbage heads. Tomatoes were set for canning peak, with peppers and eggplant filling marginal spaces. Potatoes were planted in quantity for bulk calories and storage. Every inch had to justify itself: yield per square foot, ease of preservation, and contribution to household nutrition. They taught households to plan for storage, drying beans, pickling cucumbers, making jams, so the garden's yield replaced a can on the pantry shelf months later, not just a salad that vanished in July. That transformed a momentary surplus into a strategic reserve. Social engineering: the campaign that made 1 million gardens. The program's communications were engineered for scale. Film shorts, radio spots, celebrity endorsements, school programs, and community competitions. The message was civic duty, framed as practical action. Your garden will free a ship. Social pressure and patriotism did the rest. The campaign also leveraged pre-existing skills. Many adults still remembered farm techniques, and rural-urban migration patterns left a large percentage of households with some practical gardening knowledge. The government supplied the blueprint. Communities supplied the labour. Micro-payoff: the measurable wins. The immediate gains were measurable and multidimensional. Millions of tons of produce diverted from commercial circuits. Fewer tons of canned vegetables demanded from canneries. Reduced price spikes in urban markets. Less strain on rail and shipping resources. And an informal savings of fuel, steel and labour that could be redirected to the war effort. The garden didn't just save calories, it saved ship-ton days and price points. Those are the real metrics the war economy cared about. Downsides and limits, the context that made victory possible but not universal. Victory gardens required a host of enabling conditions that were unusually present in the 1940s. First, social unity and a clear existential threat. People were willing to accept rationing and participate in civic campaigns. Second, living memory. Lots of citizens had farm experience. Third, available resources. Despite rationing, households could still get seeds, canning jars, and manure. Fourth, labour distribution. With many men overseas, labour for gardens often fell to women, children, and the elderly, a social cost that was real. There were equity gaps. Apartment dwellers and people in urban tenements had less access to plot space, and while community gardens helped, they didn't fully close the gap. Productivity also varied with local climate, soil quality, and gardening skill. The program worked because it was widespread and because commercial systems were simultaneously rationed and reorganized. In a vacuum, the garden alone wouldn't have been sufficient. Operational fragility, where the plan could break. If households had failed to preserve output, or if canneries and cold storage had been unavailable, the garden's seasonal surges could have turned into waste. Poor preservation would have created local spoilage crises without providing strategic benefit. The program depended on the loop: grow, preserve, store. Community canneries and rigorous extension education were essential to close that loop. Legacy, the resilience dividend, and what it teaches today. The strategic logic of Victory Gardens didn't vanish with the war. It reappears in modern policy under different names: urban agriculture initiatives, community resilience planning, seed bank programs, and local food system investments. The core lesson is systemic. Decentralize where centralized systems create strategic points of failure. 1 million small distributed nodes are harder to break than a few large ones. The garden was a cheap, scalable hedge against supply chain shocks and price volatility. In modern terms, it's a resilience dividend. Plain takeaways, old man tested and practical, shorten supply chains where possible. Local production removes shipment risk. Build buffer stocks in distributed form. 1,000 backyards are a better hedge than a single warehouse. Teach preservation skills. Production without preservation is temporary and often wasted. Plan plots for yield and storage, not aesthetics. This is about calories, not curb appeal. Use community facilities to overcome household constraints. Shared canneries, shared tools, shared knowledge. A sober closing. The real reason they asked you to grow zucchini. The government didn't push Victory Gardens to make people feel involved. They were protecting a financial and logistical metric, civilian demand that would otherwise bid against the war effort for scarce resources: shipping, canning steel, labour. By deleting millions of household purchasing decisions, the campaign reduced inflationary pressure and freed critical logistics for military use. Grow your zucchini, and you didn't just feed your family. You kept a ship free to carry tanks or ammunition. That's not romance, it's strategy. Final line: concise and unvarnished Victory Gardens were policy, not sentiment. They converted civic virtue into national resilience by changing who consumed and who produced, and by turning backyard soil into a strategic buffer against the structural fragility of wartime logistics. That's the real reason for Victory Gardens. And it's the kind of practical thinking worth remembering when systems get stressed again.